What's going on, everybody? Another week of Patriots Central Radio. Matt LePan here with Brian Phillips, my co-host, and tonight we're into training camp, but we're going to start with a very special guest, somebody that nobody else is getting on their podcast. It is Patriots Hall of Famer and living legend, Steve Nelson. Steve, thank you so much for joining the podcast tonight. How are you?
I'm doing great. Nice to join you.
So, Steve, welcome in. Brian Phillips, my co-host as well. We want to ask you, first off, there were some great years during your career with the Patriots. There were some tough years in there as well. What did you take away from your time as a Patriot?
Well, I think looking back, it was I never thought it was going to be. And, I grew up in Minnesota and the school at North Dakota State University, which is, one delay school to, big time college football. And then, obviously when I came out here, was kind of, it was kind of like the big time for me. So it was just a great experience. I had a lot of great friendships, a lot of great memories. Like you said, I went to one Super Bowl in my career, played in, 4 or 5 playoff games, or, during the career. So, I really couldn't ask for any more. It was a dream come true. And it's kind of interesting. I'm sure you guys kind of follow right now with the whole CTE and all the things surrounding that with the league and the Players Association. But looking back, I would never have changed anything. I would have obviously kept playing, and it was just a real gift and a real blessing for me.
Steve, a former teammate of yours just joined you in the Patriots Hall of Fame, Raymond Claiborne. Can you talk about?
Well, Raymond was an incredible speed. A couple of things that I remember about Raymond. First of all, he had the greatest recovery speed of anyone I've ever seen. If he had run support and they ran some type of play action and he got caught, to kind of play and run, and he had to get back in coverage, he could get back faster than anybody I've ever seen. Another thing I obviously remember was the AFC Championship game when we went down to Miami and beat Miami when they had Marino and Duper and Clayton and those guys. And our whole defense was we're going to push all of our help to the other corner, Ryan Lepet, who's a good player himself, but it was up to Raymond to take either Duper or Clayton on every snap and take him basically man for man all over the field. And I don't remember Raymond's stat line. I think Marino was like 20 for 50 or something, one of his worst days ever. But I think Raymond had 6 broken up passes and a pick. And it was probably the greatest single game I've ever seen a corner play. And, obviously he played with Mike Haynes for a number of years. But I've never seen a corner have such a dominating impact on a game. And, such an impact on our whole game plan. We went into that game saying, Raymond, you got to cover Mark Clayton or Mark Duper, and you're having Dan Marino throw a ball at him, and you're not going to have any help. And he played incredible.
Yeah, it's Brian Phillips here, Steve. Tell me, who on this current Patriots team would you liken to Raymond Claiborne? Who do you think is this team's Raymond Claiborne?
I think that's a great question, and I think Malcolm Butler is probably as close to Raymond as anybody I've ever seen play corner, because just attitude-wise, tough, challenging, short memory, beat, and it's the hardest position to play in football outside of quarterback. You're out there on an island. You're covering some of the fastest and most talented athletes in the world. And when you get beat, you got to forget about it and play aggressively. And no, so I think Malcolm Butler would probably be the closest. I think physically they're pretty much the same. 6'1", around 200 pounds. And I think if the styles are very similar. Aggressive, confident, tough. I think that's a good, good example of a Raymond Claiborne type player.
So how tight are you guys in the Patriots Hall of Fame? Is it a close-knit group? I mean, do you guys get together? I mean, are you staying in contact? How is that dynamic?
It's really an interesting dynamic. We really don't see each other very often. Obviously with the success the Patriots have had recently in the last 10 or 15 years, most of the guys getting into the Hall of Fame are from that era. Raymond, obviously was from, the 80s and 70s and 80s. And so it was an opportunity for all of us to get together and celebrate Raymond's induction. And, it's like a lot of things you do in life, and I always kind of, look at my kids I went to high school with and, grew up with. And, I've played football with some of them, but some of them were just my pals. But it's no matter how long you've been away from them and no matter, what you've done years and all the memories, pop up and you realize what a great team sport football is. And I think, this week I talk with John Hanna occasionally and, I go down and see, Hogg probably, once every couple of years. But like Sam Cunningham, Sam's out in California, so I really never talked to Sam. So it was great to see him and Mike Gaines. Stanley Morgan was up. So it was good to see them all. Obviously we shared something very special, and although you don't see each other very often, you still share those memories.
Steve, we mentioned, Brian brought up who would remind you this Patriots team. Does anyone kind of remind you of yourself back in the day? And kind of an extension of that, when you look at Dante Hightower, does he kind of play the game the way that you would have thought?
His size and still his ability to, play all the downs. He doesn't come off the field. He plays in all their special packages. I did that for the first couple of years of my career, and we didn't have that many defenses as they have now because we didn't have as many offensive, personnel categories as they do now. But I'd say, Hightower is probably more versatile than I was. He can rush from the outside. He's got very good cover skills. He's just a really good outstanding player. I think, I thought Teddy Bruschi and I were very similar in a few ways. I think, we both were smart and, we had, technique-wise, very sound, had noses for the football. I think, I tried to, improve everybody around me. I think Teddy did the same thing. And, I never shunned away from accepting a leadership role, and I don't think Ted did either. So I think the current Patriots, I think they're probably, most of them are a little more athletic than I was. But I think, again, Hightower would be the guy because he plays inside and he, he's very good against the run.
I think you're selling yourself short there, Steve. I mean, you bring these guys into 0-degree temperatures in a snowplow game, right? Are they gonna get a game ball like Steve Nelson back then? Tell me about that game. Tell me about that. I mean, everybody kind of wants to know. It's August right now and it's 90 degrees everywhere.
Yeah.
Tell us about the snowplow game.
That was a great game, and the one thing I remember, that was, we played Miami Dolphins up in Foxborough in late November, and it was an awful day weather-wise. It was snowing, and John Smith, through the help of Mark Henderson, who was a groundskeeper, he had the little snowplow, and he was on a work release program from prison. He went in there and kind of plowed a little path for John to be able to, plant his foot and kick the field goal that beat Miami 3-0 that day. But the one thing I remember about that game is that Mark Henderson came from our sidelines, and we probably had the ball on the 20-yard line. So he kind of, figured, well, it's about 7 yards from where the ball is, so I'm going to clear that little path. And he cleared the path about the 27-yard line, and he continued on to the other side of the field. And, of course, Shula is yelling and screaming at Mark, and Mark flips him off. And this was so cool because, Don Shula, who's the head of the Rule Committee, who was the year before Coach of the Year, some guy from the work release program just flipped him off, which was kind of, you can only get away with something like that at home, and that obviously was a big win for us. And like you said, I got the game ball that day, and that was a game where your offense was very limited because of just the weather conditions and how slippery the field was. And I think probably, I growing up in Minnesota again and playing in North Dakota State, I had some experience in the snow, and I just, I always loved those games, which, were different than the norm, which, weather affected, or night games, or, not on Sundays. If it was a little different, I always, enjoyed them more. I don't know what the reason was, because it's probably a little different, but that game will certainly be one that I always remember.
Steve, you know some of the memories of the snowball game. You were able to kind of relive that when you came back here. If you went into the hall at all. When you look at what Robert Kraft has done with this Patriots organization since your time being away from the team, what he's been able to grow, what this organization has become, and do you guys have a relationship?
Yeah, I'm kind of not hearing it very clearly, but I think the question was, what has Robert Kraft really done?
Members in general.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Have a relationship with the organization still.
Yeah, it's Brian again, Steve. I'll jump in. We're having some technical difficulties with Matt. I think he, just speak to to Robert Kraft and what he's done with the organization and how he's kind of welcomed all the the past guys like yourself, like Raymond. What what it means to be part of this Patriots organization.
Well, I think when Bob Kraft 30, 40 years ago was a fan, and he brought his boys to the game, and I think he had some connection with kind of my era of players, because he was invested as a season ticket holder and a fan, and then he had the opportunity to buy the team and the franchise and keep it in New England. I think at the time, he was fortunate to have Bill Parcells as the head coach, and of course Bill Belichick was one of the assistants then. So, I mean, he didn't hire Bill, but Bill came along with the deal, and I think that was really critical, because when you have coaches like Parcells and Belichick, it brings instant credibility to all the players. And I think that's something that's really tough for a lot of teams to get. I look at some of these teams like Buffalo, and you see the Ryan up there, and you really know that some of these, not all the players. I believe, I've been through different coaches, and you have certain respect levels for some coaches. And I had a chance to play for Bill Parcells for 1 year, and that was probably my 8th year in the league, and I learned more in 1 year than I did from any other coach, and I had tremendous respect for him, much like players have for Coach Belichick. That doesn't happen around the league. And, there's all these other teams are always, firing guys and hiring guys, trying to find the answer, and that's the one thing that the Patriots, you look back, they've been so really fortunate just to have quarterback now for the last 15 years, as well as a head coach. And there's no transitioning other people. They're both the best, they've ever played or coached, and with that combination, all the players all the teammates have, made more money, have won more championships. Coaches have had more opportunities to move on, become head coaches. I mean, the combination of Brady and Belichick have really, it's helped the alumni out. We're more, the average fan is more in tune with us now because of the success of the Patriots. So, looking at just the success they've had and the way that Bob Kraft has brought it all together, I think, is probably what every franchise wants to do. And, again, you got to be lucky because you get a Brady in the, the 5th or 6th round. Every team had a chance to draft him, and they didn't. That was just luck that he's here. But, he is something else. And, the Crafts have been smart enough to really take advantage of it.
Absolutely. And you talk about, these coaches able, having that connection with a coach. And we won't keep you too much longer, but one of those guys that really took to a coach was Rob Ninkovich. We saw his retirement this Sunday.
Yeah.
Tell me about a guy like Rob and how Bill Belichick, you see something in a guy like Rob Ninkovich, kind of a cast off from other organizations, and makes an unbelievable career of himself here in New England. Do you see him putting on a red jacket someday and joining you guys in the Patriots Hall?
I certainly hope so because, I don't know a lot of the current players. I do know Rob a little, and he's just a class act. And I think coaches, again, with the experience and the depth of a guy like Belichick, sees character in guys like Ninkovich that other coaches don't. And, for whatever reason, they're not aware of that much, or they haven't been around him enough. But I think Rob is a tremendous player, playmaker. Again, he's one of those guys that are just a leader on the team. You want to go to battle with him, guys like him every week. And he's the reason why the Patriots have won all these championships. Guys like that who are just team guys, and they just really get it. They understand that the team is more important than themselves. It's you only get one shot to really to play pro football. How do you want to leave your mark? Do you want to be a guy who held out on your contracts and tried to make as much money as you could, or how many times you got to play in the Super Bowl and be a great teammate? Rob's a great teammate, and he does so much for the community. Guys like that just do not come around very often, and I wish him the very best. And I think he's got a lot of opportunities in a lot of different things, and it'll be interesting if he stays around or what he does.
Steve, it's Matt again. Sorry about that. I dropped off. Were you surprised with Ninkovich's retirement as talk about him here?
Yeah, I was a little surprised. Again, I'm not in. Obviously, I'm not in any of those guys' inner circles, but I just, again, just from my own experience, if you win a championship, there's so many mixed feelings, and you're getting older, and you win a championship, and one thing about playing in the playoffs is it shortens your off season. A lot of these guys don't have the recovery time that the guy who doesn't make the playoff doesn't, and that obviously you want to play as long as you can, but it really does shorten that off season, and it's harder on your body. I think it's harder on your mind. Rob is married now. He's got a couple of little kids, and all that stuff kind of just adds up. And I was surprised because I don't know how he is physically. He plays awful hard. And he plays in a position where you can't hide. So it's awful hard to be on all the time and to be ready to go. And again, I'm glad he had a chance to go out in his own terms. He's got a great reputation in New England. Great football player, great man. So he'll do just fine.
Yeah, Steve, Brian again. Last question. You've been so generous with your time. Being a Minnesota guy going to North Dakota State, when you look out there, I mean, how much Carson Wentz fever do you have? Is everybody kind of excited for him? Right? You've got to be pretty excited for your guy Carson Wentz, right?
Oh, I am. And I one of my old teammates at North Dakota State is one of the ADs now at North Dakota State, and he said, when I talk to him all the time, but when Carson was like a junior, well, even a sophomore, he didn't play. He didn't, he was backing up a quarterback who won 3 national championships at North Dakota State in Division I AA, and then Carson came in and won, I think 1 or 2. So, but he always said this kid is special. He goes, he's big, he's fast, he can throw a ball about 90 yards in the air. But he was ahead of Special Olympics out in North Dakota. He was just, I think his valedictorian of his high school class in Bismarck. He's just a quality kid off the field. All his teammates loved him. And I think when you see him kind of interacting last year as a rookie quarterback, it really looked like his teammates liked him. And that's very important. Again, playing, with young quarterbacks, I played with Steve Grogan, who was, the second year he had Steve started, and he immediately got the respect from all his teammates by the way he played. And I think Carson Wentz is much like that. He worked so hard to prepare himself that players notice it, and again, it's a position you can't hide. You just, it's not like maybe a left guard or right guard or nose guard who can kind of hide in some places. When you're getting the ball every down, you got to be ready to play. And I think he's going to have a long career, and it's really good to see. It's North Dakota State now has probably 10 guys in the league, so it's been an awesome run for him.
That's awesome. Yeah, Steve Nelson, Patriots Hall of Famer, joining us on Patriots Central Radio. Steve, you've been so generous with your time, but for all the listeners out there who think you've been generous with his time for us, this weekend, our producer Brian is doing Odie Palooza 2. Not this weekend, I'm sorry, August 12th, Buttonwood Park, New Bedford, from 1 to 3 p.m. Come meet Patriots Hall of Famer Steve Nelson over by Vovo's Kitchen, brought to you by Vovo's Kitchen. Steve, thanks so much for joining us again, being so generous with your time, and we'll hope to have you on again sometime in the future.
Great. Anytime, guys. Let me know. And again, I look forward to seeing you, Brian, and guys, Matt, on the 12th in New Bedford. It's going to be a lot of fun. Come hungry. It's got a lot of food there, and I certainly am looking forward to it.
Great. Thanks so much, Steve.
You got it, guys. Good luck.
Thanks, Steve.
All right, we got you back, Panda.
All right, so I think we have my connection problem.
All right, Matt's still a little choppy. Yeah, still a little choppy. The Wi-Fi.
Can you hear me now?
So much greatness. Oh, he's got to be furious. Oh, brutal, man. It's brutal. Just rough, man. That silent assassin, yeah. Yeah. Send us your best captions. What are your best? Send us your best captions for that face right there. Yeah, that look when. Boom. Send us your. Frozen Matt LePan. We always got your still picture up there when you're on. But then, yeah, I'm just kind of like a moving. Nobody. Yeah. Yeah. That's right. That's right. Well, hey, tell us about more about where they can see Steve Nelson on the 12th, man. Tell us about Odie Palooza too. The Frozen Panda. Man, the technology that sucks for him though. But I mean, so we were going to talk about Rob Ninkovich's. We were going to talk about Nink's retirement. One of my biggest moments for and this is so perfect that I get to talk to a Bills fan right now, is that that regular season game in 2014, the 3-sack Rob Ninkovich performance. You've got to be happy to see a guy like that go, a guy that's been a pain in your ass since 2009, right? Right. Of course. Yeah. Well, so I mean, if we're talking about other, AFC East corners, one that we acquired in free agency, Stephon Gilmore, your boy, getting in a little scrap, a little scuffle with Edelman, both getting booted from practice on Tuesday, hitting the showers. That's the rule in Belichick's training camps. If you're fighting in a game, you're going to get kicked out. So, you're getting kicked out in practice. Both of them, they were. So it's not a weird thing that this is not like an act. He's gritty. He likes getting down. Oh, for sure. That's right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and you saw that too. And obviously, there's been a lot of talk about Patriots training camp. It's been a little lackluster, a little sloppy, lacking intensity, this and that. Uh, you see two guys, two faces of the franchise. With Edelman being a veteran leader and a guy who you're bringing in to be one of those faces of the defense for years to come. You're right. Got to come in and show that you're a leader. Obviously, it's a scrap, and they're both getting kicked out. But what do they do on Wednesday morning? This morning, they come in. They're the first two guys on the field per reports from training camp. So, yeah, I mean, right, and it's under certain circumstances, right? I mean, you don't want it to be an ego thing, If it's and clearly, both of them are showing up, walking out onto the field together this morning. It's just the heat of competition. We all know Julian likes to jaw. He's a little he's like a Yorkshire Terrier out there, man. He's always jawing, always getting at somebody, and. Unfrozen?
You got me on audio. I'm still efforting the video. Sorry about that, guys. Yeah, the confused frozen look wasn't very good. Yeah, it's crying Jordans everywhere on the Panda podcast and on Patriots Central Radio.
So, Matt,
all right, so I heard
give me
you
the name,
talking
man.
about the Gilmore fight.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Obviously you and Brian were just talking about it, but I think this was tremendous. Stephon Gilmore is a guy who is that big time free agent who comes in. You don't necessarily expect him to be the one scrapping it up with one of your arguably two or three biggest leaders on your roster in Julian Edelman, a guy who's been here, a guy who's made plays in Super Bowls and all that. I love seeing it. I think that if Gilmore is going to play with that kind of fire all the way along, you can't beat that. If he's going to play with that kind of fire, that kind of intensity, it's going to be a really good year for him. Even though, you had some people worrying about his desire, about his attitude. I think that it's definitely a good look if he's out there scrapping it up.
Oh, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, it's exactly what you want. Especially when you see them both come back on the field, be the first guys out there this morning. The day after they get kicked out of camp. You want them showing that example too. That hey, yeah, it was fire and intensity on the field, but we're still brothers in the locker room. Obviously it's not something that's going to spill over, especially with the guys, high class guys like Gilmore and Edelman. You just know he was John too, because that's how he is. He's always going to be talking. He's always yapping. So exactly.
Oh yeah, and I mean if you look at the reports, I believe it was either Mark Daniels or Mike Reeves who put it out there that Edelman wasn't happy about Gilmore holding him, so he started to swat his hands away after the play, and Gilmore was having none of it and gave him a couple of shoves. They went to the ground, and then the next day they're back at it, and these are two competitive guys. I think that they put it beside them, and they're just going to keep going. I know that Bill Belichick hates those, and what he hated even more was the questions that came out of it afterwards of
course,
some reporter today asking about what he was going to do to discipline them, and he just kind of I'll deal with discipline.
Right.
So I think it was great. I think that it's a good thing to see that these guys are already so fiery, so intense, in really what was considered, these past 2 days were like the quote unquote dog days. Don't tell Steve Nelson that.
Right.
This would be like a day off to him now, but these are the dog days. It was humid. It was gross out. All reports from the field were that it was muggy. It just didn't feel like a good practice. And here are your two of your better players scrapping it up and getting ready to go. I think it's a good sign for the season. I think it's an even better sign when you look at joint practices coming up next week. I think that they're ready to go. They're already chomping at the bit to get another team in here.
Yeah, that's huge. Oh, so excited for the joint practices. And again, with the new practices scheduled for Detroit too. I guess they're not going to be open to the public. Of course, the week I moved to Michigan, they're not going to be open to the public. But 3 weeks in a row of really getting after it against some competition. But I mean, I want to get your take on it, Panda, about the lack of intensity that everybody's reporting, the sloppiness, the kind of hasn't looked that good and that tight, and obviously, Bill referring to running out of days before you see competition. He's obviously got a checklist he wants to get run down with these this week of practices. What do you take? I mean, are you looking? Am I looking too far into this lack of intensity or what?
I don't know if it's necessarily a lack of intensity. And by the way, back on video. Of course,
I'm seeing they want it frozen. People want the okay.
Right,
never mind.
They want the avatar back. I don't think that it's looking too far into it to be a little concerned about the fact they're out here and they're a little bit of malaise a week into practice. But I also think that it's kind of that point in the off season. People think that training camp is the kickoff to the off season. And yes, there's that break in between, but these players have already been through mini camps against each other, OTAs against each other, the start of training camp, conditioning runs, meetings, more meetings. They're eating meals together.
They've been working out together, right?
Yeah, they're kind of sick of hitting each other everywhere, on, off the field, no matter what. They want to get to another team. I think that they need to get through. They need to get through today, and they did. Not unscathed, but they got through today. The reports were Hogan and Slater both going down, with Amendola not practicing, so wide receiver a little thin. But if they got through today and they come out tomorrow, I believe there are no pads tomorrow. So they come out in shells and they have a good, crisp practice. Just kind of build up that confidence and get through the weekend, get to Jacksonville. I think they're in good shape. Once you see another team come in, if they play with no intensity, that's when the red lights start flashing, the red flags go up. But I just don't see that happening, especially not with the Bill Belichick coach team. You look at who was probably the most intense in these practices, the videos of Bill Belichick and Josh McDaniels throwing the dummies at Tom Brady and Jimmy Garoppolo are the best, arguably the best video Patriots.com has ever gotten.
That still picture of Bill, I think it was Kevin Duffy. I believe it was Duffy that tweeted it out.
Put it up.
That picture of Bill just still framing it. Oh my God, that's wallpapered everywhere now. But
that's why I don't think you have to worry about it, because you're seeing Bill Belichick with that intensity still, and it's not all bad coming out of the practice.
Right.
You heard today that Noel Gillisley meant Rex Burkhead was playing the lead back and looked really good according to Mike Reese. He was catching the ball well, running the ball well against, he was getting popped by the first team defense. And, they said he was running pretty well. Obviously it's training camp, so you can't get a true feel on running. But then you also had a guy who I think has kind of gotten an unfair shake of things in Dwayne Allen. And all reports are the past 2 days when the team's kind of been down, he's been lifting them up. And, Rob Gronkowski spoke today about it and said that he's a great guy to have here. He's been blocking really strong, which not his forte, but if he's out there putting in the effort to block, he's catching everything that's thrown his way. Tom Brady's been looking his way a lot. Garoppolo's been looking his way a lot. I think that when you see two players like this that are expected to play a big role, you can take positives out of it. And yes, obviously, like I said, good reason to be a little concerned, but when you get positives like that, I think that you take those positives over that negative.
No, absolutely. And I think again, with OTAs, I know some of his drops and everything. People were really getting on Allen. He had the drops during those rainy, wet practices, and then even some of the outdoor practices where the weather was a little more fair. He didn't look that sharp, but you got to give a guy the benefit of the doubt, right? He's a veteran. He's never. I think it's also a little bit of we overrate him coming in with the acquisition. As if
Patriots fans overreact? Get out of here.
I know, exactly. It's going to be tough to fill Martellus Bennett's shoes, and Dwayne Allen's not here to do that to the fullest Martellus Bennett, extent of that. But, it's not going to be a Scott Chandler situation, guys. Just pump the brakes a little bit. What I'm a little more concerned about, well, not so much concerned, I'm a little more interested in who's going to be that third tight end. Or do they keep 4? Is there room for 4? There's so many different combinations with this 53-man roster. I know you've got about 70 guys making your 53-man
yes,
roster.
I do.
So we got some shuffling to do. And speaking of guys making your 53, Harvey Lange time, huh? Everybody's talking about him
the whole time.
You're locked and loaded with Harvey Lange.
I think that, the tight end situation is going to be pretty interesting. O'Shaughnessy has apparently been pretty dreadful in his time, and then he got dinged up. My Cody Hollister pick is looking just absolutely foolish. He's not even getting run with the third team, according to
Jake's the tight end, right?
Yes, sorry. Yes.
But Cody's been hurt.
Yeah, he's the receiver. But they look the same. It's fine.
Yeah.
And then, Langle is kind of flying under the radar here. You might see Matt Lingle on the roster again, which you've had all along. I'll give you that. But if you were to look today, the roster, the way it shakes out, they might keep 2 because they might want to keep some of these other guys on here. They might need to keep an extra defender with Rob Ninkovich retiring. Because are you going to lean on Shea McClellan and Harvey Lange to all of a sudden play defensive end roles? Or are you going to look at Dietrich Wise, who, according to all reports, has been tremendous? Spoke with the media. He's a guy who's really putting in the work, but are you going to rely on him? I don't think so. And then, Rivers he's unfortunately not been so hot. It's rare that you see your 4th-round pick outperforming your 3rd-round pick, but that's what's been happening in this camp. Looks like Wise is probably ahead of Rivers on the depth chart, and Rivers might need that redshirt year that people were talking about where he needs to put on some weight. I doubt that happens with the Ninkovich retirement, but you're relying on 2 rookies, an undrafted rookie, so 3 rookies, and Shea McClellan. I don't feel good about it. I think that the Patriots are going to need to keep some extra defenders that we might not have thought of before.
Yeah, I think when we're talking about the Patriots looking to make another transaction, whether it be via signing street free agent or via trade, obviously this is a big time of year for Bill, wheeling and dealing, but I think nobody is talking about the tight end position. You can't come out of camp with 2 tight ends. You've got to have a third, and it can't be Cameron Fleming. Like Mike Williams was kind of 2 years ago coming out of camp.
Michael Williams.
Right, like
his poor knee.
Oh yeah, it's just one of those things where I just don't see the depth. Obviously, Hollister, take your Hollister, whatever Hollister does, Hollister Gene Company. Lingle, yeah, sure, but you can't tell me that Bill Belichick is going to be satisfied with that depth. We're talking about a team that's always bringing in, the Jake Ballards and these veteran tight ends in the past. I think you definitely see something like that happen to bring at least some competition back there if O'Shaughnessy is going to be banged up and not getting reps and looking bad when he does get on the field in the first place. I think you see a move at tight end before you see one at defensive end, especially with all the resources they put in and two draft picks and Coney Ely coming in the offseason. They knew something was up with Nate. So I think got to make a move at tight end. So
they had that feeling, but realistically looking at tight end, right, the way I look at it is Langle still has practice squad eligibility, and, is he a guy who is going to get scooped up? Probably not. Hollister's obviously still going to have practice squad availability. And, you might come in with 2, depending on that week 1 matchup. Kansas City, when you look at them, you're going to be a little more concerned about containing the edge and stopping them defensively than you're going to be worried about an extra tight end. That's a team that you're going to want to spread with, 3 running backs, 4 receivers, 5 receivers, 4 tight ends and Gronkowski, or 4 receivers and Gronkowski. You're going to want to spread them out so that they can't get that quick rush off the edge. They can't get that push up the middle because they have a really good front, but when you spread them out, they're very vulnerable. Offensively, are you all that concerned about them? Probably not. So I don't know. It's a tough spot.
But I think you're also looking a little too broad as far as game plan. We're looking at our 2 starting tight ends who are very notorious for injuries. Not much has to be said about that, especially with Gronk. But Dwayne Allen's got a litany of injuries. And they were talking on PFW about how he kind of lumbers around the locker room and kind of walks with some of that pain in his knees. He's got bad knees. Yeah, you're going to want to spread Kansas City out and everything, but I think if you're looking at how many times in a game you get in a situation where you want to run 2 tight ends or you're inside the 10-yard line and you want to bring in a big personnel package or something, you're not always bringing in Cam Fleming as lining them up outside of Solar or outside of Cannon. I think they need to have that layer of depth, and I'd be shocked if it was just 3 tight ends, if it was just Allen, Gronk, and Langle. Obviously not in that order. But I see a move, but I don't know. Who do I know? We're gonna be ripping up our 53-man projections at the end of camp anyway.
Yeah, it's okay. They're fun to do anyways, especially when you put 70 guys on there like I do.
Hey, we got to talk about, you missed it because you were having the technical difficulties. We got to talk about your favorite Rob Ninkovich moment, man.
Yep, so I was actually just getting back to that. So Rob Ninkovich obviously holds a special spot in a lot of people's hearts in New England. Just that consummate Bill Belichick, professional player, brought his lunch pail every day. Every cliche you can put up to Rob Ninkovich. And
oh boy. The panda's going down again, ladies and gentlemen.
It's tough seeing the guy go, but I whittled mine down to a couple different ones here.
I think.
Am I good? Can you hear me? If I don't know video, can you hear me?
Yes. Yeah.
You can hear me, not see me?
Yeah, I think we got to get the frozen team.
Seriously, okay. So getting back to it, so Ninkovich, 2012. Patriots and Jets had, that rivalry going where the Jets were actually halfway decent. And Rob Ninkovich came out in the game against the Jets, I believe it was week 8. And late in the game, he and Jermaine Cunningham closed down on Mark Sanchez. Ninkovich got the sack, the forced fumble, the fumble recovery to seal the game, seal the Patriots win. That's like your quintessential, you need a big play out of somebody. Who's it going to be? It's going to be Rob Ninkovich. He's just going to go out there and make that key fumble recovery, that key forced fumble. Another one that I look back, same season, a few weeks later, was against the Peyton Manning-led wagon of a Denver Broncos offense when they were firing on all cylinders.
Yep.
And Ninkovich lined up at defensive end, stood up before the snap, dropped back, and then dropped into coverage, picked off Peyton Manning. He only brought the ball back like 10 yards, but it was one of those he started the play with his hand in the dirt and ended up 20 yards downfield, picking the ball off and bringing it back a decent amount and just really ignited the team. You looked at, the sideline, it was Matt Patricia, Bill Belichick were the first 2 out to congratulate him. He was always good for those kind of plays. And one that gets overlooked is that second half sack that Rob Ninkovich had in Super Bowl 49. People always remember one play in that game. They don't remember that the Patriots were getting their asses kicked. They were getting beat pretty good. And all of a sudden, the defense started chip away. And obviously, Tom Brady's fourth quarter was insane. But Ninkovich kind of started it all. Got in on Russell Wilson and really brought him down hard. He got a good, solid hit on him. And it kind of started, that's when it started to teeter. I was between those three. If I had to go with one, I would go with the Super Bowl moment. Because
yeah, for sure.
That's when the biggest stage, you need a play, your defense is struggling. Who comes up? Rob Ninkovich with the big play in a defense where he was really, in that defense, he was pretty much an afterthought.
Yeah, see, that's the thing with Rob Ninkovich. When you ask people to bring up, your favorite Rob Ninkovich moment, there aren't a ton of stick out at jump right out at you moments. But that's the thing about him, and we were talking about it earlier in the week. That's the thing about Rob Ninkovich, that it wasn't any one play, it wasn't any specific thing. The guy was the epitome. He epitomized do your job, right? Anything that was asked of him. It's so cliche, but anything that was asked of him, Rob Ninkovich did, and that's how he earned a spot on this team, and that's how he stuck around. And the biggest play is probably that sack of Russell Wilson in Super Bowl 49. But it was always, anytime you look at when the defense needed a play and there was a momentum shift, it was always precluded by a Rob Ninkovich tackle to force a 3rd and long, or a pass deflection, or forcing a quarterback up in the pocket by getting out, beating his guy out on the edge. It was always him doing something small that led to something small happening, and then something even smaller happening. But next thing you know, it's 3rd and long, and the Patriots get off the field. It was never something big and flashy, but I'll always remember Rob Ninkovich for making kind of those do everything type of plays where he's. You kind of have to rewind it with the DVR and say, what was Nink doing out there? That was Nink out in the flat. That was, Nink dropped back in the Will linebacker spot or something. But again, never one big splash moment for me that popped out with him. Gonna miss him though.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that the best way that you can personify Rob Ninkovich's career was his closing press conference. The team comes in off the field. The entire team is there. The front office is there, and they're all packed in the media room's decent size down Gillette, but for 150, 200 people, it's tiny. And for everyone to pack into that room, and Bill Belichick is sitting on the floor,
right,
listening to him speak, and he says, as he's tearing up, trying to fight back, crying, says, "I gave you everything I have, Coach. I hope it was enough." Even to the day that he retired, Ninkovich was giving it his best and not taking the credit for it. So, it's something that, there's been talk about it ever since the Super Bowl ended. Would he be the guy to go out? But for it to actually happen now, it's, Patriots fans are going to miss him, but at the same time, I think they're going to miss the name. They're not going to miss the player he was. I don't want to end it on a sour note here, but everybody kind of glosses over the fact that he didn't play all that well last year. He came off a PED suspension. The name is something that's always going to stick. That's what will make him a Patriots Hall of Famer. That name, that quintessential Belichick guy. But in the end, it came down to a PED suspension and poor play and limited play in the Super Bowl. Yes, he went out a champion. Yes, he went out in the apple of everybody's eye. He is... Rob Ninkovich, everybody's going to look at him as Patriots Hall of Famer, wasn't without a little controversy at the end. I think it's going to be missing the name more than it's going to be missing the play.
Yeah, and I think it also you remember before that suspension too, he had that torn tricep, I believe it was. It was either a tricep or a bicep.
Yeah, it's triceps. Yep.
Tear a tricep, it's only a 6-week injury. I'll never understand it. These guys are crazy. But it just makes you think how many injuries he played through. How many, he's one of those guys that, has everything to lose every time he takes the field because, being the undrafted free agent, one injury that you can't play through and, especially in Foxborough, and you could be gone, your career could be over. Because he's not a guy that that other teams would be, tripping over themselves. Maybe they would for the name to sign him, and then they get him in camp and get him into their facility and realize, okay, well, man, they were really making chicken salad with chicken shit with this guy, because he wasn't the craziest athlete, and we all know that. So he's one of those guys that you wonder how many injuries he played through, and it brings you right to the concussion thing. How many concussions did this guy play through in his career? And obviously, by the end of it, the triceps thing, the PED suspension, everything's kind of a culmination of the end of a career. And it's he lasted a hell of a lot longer than a lot of guys do, but it's just that's the career arc of an undrafted free agent that ends up making it for a while.
Well, and you look at he was on Toucher and Rich here in Boston, and he said he played through a blood clot in his leg. And
right, like
it's still there. He needs to have surgery to remove this blood clot, but he was worried that any day that thing could break free and
he's dead.
His heart get into his brain, anything like that. So, when we were talking with Steve, when I actually had a connection still, he was saying that he's a guy, and I think Steve was spot on with this. A guy with a family, a guy who's done all he can do, proved everything he can prove, and went out a champion. I think that this was kind of the perfect storm. Everybody forgot about what happened at the beginning of the year because he went out a champion. And I think that's how he'll be remembered. He'll be remembered as a champion, remembered as a fan favorite who gave it everything and went out at the right time.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of champions going out, you kind of got overshadowed this week, but Lonnie Paxton retired as a Patriot this week.
6 years later.
Yeah, right. I know, but hey,
I forgot. Lonnie... Seems like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Killing it. No, I think.
Is that your?
I think he forgot to sign his paperwork.
That's pretty good.
I think he forgot to sign his paperwork. Scott Zolak said this on the radio earlier this week. He said that 3 years later, his agent called him 3 years after he retired, called him and said, "Look, we have your paperwork filed, but you still have to go and sign it. You have to physically sign your paperwork saying you're retired." I think that it's a situation like that, and when it came across the transaction wire that he officially did it, like, hey, look, this is an opportunity to get a guy in here who is beloved. It's crazy as it sounds. Nowhere else but New England are you going to get a long snapper who's going to be beloved and get his own day to retire as a member of the team than with the Patriots. Bob Kraft does a great job with that. And Lonnie has done some great things. He's a guy who, he turned a long snapping career into probably a more successful post-NFL career. How many long snappers, do that? Usually they just go off into obscurity. He's gone out and he's done really well for himself. He's, by all accounts, I've met him once or twice, and from all accounts, everybody who's worked with him is a tremendous guy. Good for him. I mean, yeah, 6 years later, it's, you get a chuckle out of it, like, oh, Lonnie Paxton retired Patriot today, right. Okay. But, I have no problem with it. I think it's actually a pretty cool thing, and,
cool.
They didn't overdo it. It's not like if, the Red Sox had done it and, Charles Steinberg is going to be out there, setting off fireworks and playing long snapping montage videos. Like, they did tasteful little thing.
Yeah. It was cool. And it was cool to hear him on PFW in Progress kind of talk a little bit about his time, but obviously, it's a hell of a flight from San Diego out to Foxborough, out to Boston. Obviously, you're not flying into Foxborough. I don't know if maybe Bob sent the jet out for him, but
sent the old helicopter.
Yeah, the old Kraft mobile. But no, it's cool. It's a cool thing. Hey, is that Bob Kraft on the line?
It's Mr. Kraft. Is that you? Jonathan.
the official
I
Comcast
deserve
provider.
that.
Having Steve Nelson on was awesome, man. What a
was.
cool guy. Gave us 25 minutes. He's gonna be at Odie Palooza 2 on the 12th, giving his time. What a cool guy, man. Patriots legend, giving back to the community, and then sharing his time with us.
And Brian, before we wrap it up here, just for Brian Harrington, I want to plug Odie Palooza real hard. So for those who don't know, we've been plugging it. Brian Harrington runs a dog rescue, Odie's Rescue, Odie's Place Dog Rescue. And the dogs he does with them are, he and his wife do amazing things. Blind dogs that have been beaten, dogs that have been starved, neglected dogs. They take them, they really rehabilitate them and find them good forever homes. And this is the way that he can do that is, a food truck. It's a festival that has food trucks. It's going to have Patriots Hall of Famer Steve Nelson from 1 to 3. It's going to have music. It's going to have entertainment. I strongly suggest everybody check it out online. Odie Palooza 2. Check it out online. See if you can go. See if you can donate. If not, it's a really good cause. I'm a dog person, so it's I rescued my dog, near and dear to my heart. I know Brian has put in a ton of work on top of all these podcasts and all these radio shows he produces. So I just want everybody to make sure they check it out and at least try to donate something, if not make it down to the festival.
There are over 100 dogs now. He's saying over 100 dogs they've rescued and more, and counting. So get on down to Odie Palooza too. Yeah. Fried dough.
So everybody make sure and check that out. Like I said, Brian pretty selflessly does a lot of great work. So wanted to make sure we plug that. And now we get selfish and we plug ourselves after we plug that. Brian, what do you have that you've been working on, and where can people find you?
Been a little hectic for me the last couple weeks with the move and getting married next month and everything. Got a lot going on, but finishing up the off-season Patriots, the Patriots season opponents coming up, breaking down the positional groups. We dropped the running back group last week, so this week I'll have the receivers up this week, and then quarterbacks, and then we'll do a recap piece. But then tomorrow morning also did a little piece, just kind of piggybacking on Mary Kay Cadditt's piece in the Cleveland Plain Dealer on Jamie Collins and his past, his upbringing, and kind of some of the stuff he had to say about being traded to Cleveland. But kind of an eye-opening piece from Mary Kay Cadditt. I piggybacked on that. It'll be on patspulpit.com tomorrow morning, and you can see all my stuff on Twitter. My Twitter handle is @bphillips_pp.
Yeah, check that out. Brian's the positional group thing has been a lot of work, and it's been really well done. So make sure to check it out for Brian. On my end, you can find me on Twitter at Matt_LePan. Going to have the first installment of our weekly interview with Cortland Sutton from SMU, the #1 wide receiver in the country, coming up early next week. And then every week I'm going to talk to him. And you heard Brian mention it, the Panda podcast is officially here. It's on Pro Football Central. You can find it on SoundCloud. I'm on Podbean, and we're going to have it up on iTunes soon. You can subscribe. I'm not just droning on about football. Look at that.
Ooh.
They have.
Ooh.
The target demo is excellent. But so on my first ever episode, I had on the executive director of the College Football Playoff, Bill Hancock, and he gave me some really interesting insight into the playoff experience. Just to drop a little piece to entice everybody to go look, Bill mentioned that they almost had the playoffs on campus like they do for lower levels of college football. So it's a little nugget that I don't know if anybody's ever gotten before. Go and check that out. Had our talk with Cortland Sutton. Going to have another episode coming up this week. Might get into a little more than just football. The inaugural episode, however, was strictly football. Hit me up with some ideas. I say it on the podcast a lot that I want to hear what the people want to talk about, and I want to talk about that. So either at Matt_LePan or at Panda Podcast, hit me with some ideas, hit me with your feedback, subscribe to the podcast, download it, everything, check it out. We'll have that for you every week. And then, like I said, we're going through with some NFL draft stuff and entering, the nitty-gritty of Patriots camp where we're getting into games. Going to start doing some game previews, some fantasy football articles, and all that good stuff.
Busy dude.
Yeah, and all that with a baby at home.
Hey.
And that is actually going to wrap it for this week, folks. Apologies on my end for the technical difficulties, but we want to thank Steve Nelson for coming on. Patriots Hall of Famer came on, gave us 25 minutes of a tremendous interview. Go back, listen to that. Listen, he had some great nuggets on comparing current players to past players. Brian did a great job carrying it when I had some technical difficulties, so great work, Brian. But for now, that's going to do it on Patriots Central Radio. We'll catch you